What's going on, everybody? I hope you guys are well and warm, kicking it fly today. I'm actually just restacking my wood pile today because, well, my dogs like to come in here and just take random pieces of wood and run away with them. So I have to come and gather them all up and then bring them back. But it's part of the pleasures of being alive, isn't it? I hope you guys are all just chilling, having a great Friday. I was out here and I was thinking, you know what? It reminded me that we should be talking about things that you need to consider before you start gardening. And the reason I wanted to get into that is because I've talked about mistakes and I've talked about things to avoid, but what I haven't discussed are things that we need to take into consideration before we get started, before we get excited. There's a train coming. This is an exciting time right now for cannabis legalization, now that we have an industry that is exploding. It is getting more and more proliferated by legalization, and more people now have access to gardening than they ever had before. So I wanted to think, what do you need to consider before you start growing? Well, the first thing I think you should consider is your grow space. Where are you going to be growing? Is it going to be in a closet? Is it going to be in a basement? Is it going to be in a corner? Is it going to be outside? Are you going to be in a tent? These are all environments that require a little bit different approach than each other. If you're going to be outside, well, you need to consider things like shade, bugs, pests, people around you. What are you going to have access in the soil in terms of nutrients? Is it going to be an organic run? Are you going to be feeding synthetically? Are you going to be growing in a basement? Basements are going to provide colder environments, particularly colder floors. This is something you need to consider so that you can raise the pot above the ground. Also, are you going to be growing in a humidity, or are you going to be growing in a moist environment? Is it a dry environment? This is something you're going to want to consider. Are you going to be in a closet? Are you going to be in a tent? Closets are great because they're stealth and you don't have to do much to prepare it, but they're also not sealed from the environment. Tents are great, but they cost a little more money, but they're entirely sealed from the environment. Where are you going to be growing? Number 2, genetics. Get quality genetics, and it's not hard. I can't tell you where to get them here, but with a little bit of homework and following me on other platforms, you can get a pretty good idea. Don't forget you can follow me on Instagram, Pigeons420, Twitter, Pigeons420, Twitch, Pigeons420. That's where we can give away all the access to answers and all those things that we can't discuss here, but get quality genetics. Take the variables out and insert quality. That way you know what you're going to get. Is it going to be a short flowering time, long flowering time? Is it a stretchy plant? Is it a squat? Does it prefer heavier nutrients? Does it prefer moist environments? These are things you're going to want to consider before you start growing it. Number 3, your medium. Now, we kind of touched on your growing space at the beginning, but what are you growing in? Are you going to be DWC? Are you going to grow hydroponics? Are you going to grow in a medium, or are you going to grow in a soilless medium? Are you going to go organic? These are things you should consider before you start growing so you can get an idea of how to prepare your situation, your grow space. Are you going to have to learn about organics? Are you going to have to learn about composting? Are you going to learn about synthetics? These are all questions that you're going to want to consider so that you don't all of a sudden have to scramble when you get to a point where you just have to kind of consider what's going on. Number 4, this is kind of less considered, but your hydro rates. When do you get to grow at the cheapest rate? With inflation these days, with the price of gas, everything, the food, everything is expensive. And that is the same thing for electricity. When are you going to be paying the least amount for your electricity? Is it in the evening? Is it during the day? Is it the afternoon? Chances are it's probably in the evening. So that might help your decision when it comes to when you're going to start to grow. So check your hydro rates. Now, when it comes to pricings, let me tell you, you can save some money with our sponsors. Guys, we got the best sponsors in the game. If you go to spider-farmer.com, you can check out everything Spider Farmer. They have got a budget-friendly G-Series LED using American-made diodes. You can daisy chain, you can dim them, you get the same power as the expensive diodes, but you save some money. If you go to spider-farmer.com, use promo code PIGEONS420, you can save even more money. Guys, a tip that you should consider before you start gardening is getting quality equipment. And I highly recommend Spider Farmer. They've been a sponsor of this channel for a very long time, and I stand true to them because they've got great Products, and they're a great company. They've got your back with good warranty as well. Also consider AC Infinity, acinfinity.com. Use promo code PIGEONS420. They've got everything from humidifiers to smart controllers to the air circulation systems, clip-on fans, you name it, you can get it at acinfinity.com. One of my favorite pieces of equipment is the humidifier, and it's huge. They've got like a 4-liter one, or like a 5-liter one now. It's 15-liter one now. It's massive. Guys, you can check it out, acinfinity.com. Use promo code PIGEONS420. Save as much money as possible. One of the biggest things you need to consider when you start growing is not going overboard when it comes to spending money. And that is an easy thing to do when you start gardening, because there's lights, there's tents, there's circulation systems, there's genetics, there's everything that all of a sudden piles in on you when you start gardening. Start with a good budget. Get an idea of how much money you're gonna spend and try to stay true to it, because everything can spend a lot of money, but once you put the word cannabis in front of it, all of a sudden the markup goes up like twofold. So keep a good eye out for good products. And finally, you need to take into consideration the time it's going to take you to grow these plants. This is not an overnight endeavor. It's going to take some time. You're going to be vegging these plants for at least 2 months. You're going to be flowering these plants for at least 2 months. You need to take into consideration that flowering time. It's very important. If you're going to be training your plants, well, you just increased your veg time. Are you going to go auto flowers? Because then that's going to be a shorter amount of time for a smaller harvest. How long is it going to take you to grow this plant? That's something I think we underappreciate when we first get started, because I feel like we think we can just get this plant growing and we can harvest overnight. But that's the reality check. Fully understand the process of this plant from beginning to end, and don't forget that there's also a drying and a curing process that you need to take into consideration as well. So, how long is it going to take you to grow this plant? About 6 months. Guys, if you have any questions, if you have anything you want to add when it comes to things you need to consider before you start growing, leave them in the comment section below. I want to hear from you. But that's all the time I have today. Much love, stay medicated, and don't forget, you're awesome.